Hey dev team, welcome back to Flutter with Drag. Today what I want to do is get these date buttons at the top of our app working. At the moment they're just sitting there looking not very pretty and not doing much at all. What I want them to be is we've set our fictional conference to be on, I think it was the 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th of March 2023. And what we want is to be able to click on any of these dates and see the events that are just associated with that date. So to do that, I have made a quick change to our Firestore database, and I've added this date or day field in. These are day number fields, and I've just set 1 to 8, 1 to 9, and 1 to 10. So let's code that in. The first thing we need to do is come to our models and come to our conf event model, because we need to add that information to our model. So this is going to be an int called day. Straightforward as that. It's going to be required. So this day, we're going to need to add it in here, but we can't yet because we need to generate our part file first for that to work. And so we need to add it in here, and it's going to be an int column get day, and it's going to be an integer like so. Okay, so if we save that and run our Flutter pub run build runner build, hopefully that will rebuild our database part files for us. Give that a second to run, and as soon as that is done, we can just add it into this two columns override here and get cracking. So let's give that a few seconds to run. And in fact, it's finished straight away. So let's add in our day there, and that's just going to be value day. Okay, now because we've made a change to our database, we will need to technically update the schema version and put a load of stuff in, and I'll do that at some point to show you how that works. But as we're still in development, I'm just going to do it my cheaty way at the moment and take the file that we've created and just delete it. So the database file itself is deleted and will be rebuilt completely, so we don't have to worry about adding new columns and things like that. So I'm just going to save that and hit refresh or hot restart, and then once it's restarted I can delete the file sync delete, and now our app is back, but the database has been recreated with the correct tables in, which now has that column, integer column. Okay, so that's our model done. That's our database mostly taken care of. There is one thing I'm going to need to do here, and that is, at the moment we have a stream of events or conference events, and it's all of them. I want to be able to get some of those by day. So rather than getting everything, I want to get it by day. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to rename this copied version to watch conference events by day, and that's going to require an input of an integer day. And then we can take our select statement and we can add to that a where expression, and we can say where the day is equals the day we're putting in. I don't know why I keep putting E at the end of day. There we go. So that watch conference event by day will take the day and just select from our query the day or the events on the day that we've selected. Okay, save that, and that's the database taken care of. Next thing is going to be the conference repository, because again in here we have this get events, but we're going to need a get events by day which returns the database watch conference events by day that we've just created. So let's come to our conference interface. We'll take a copy of that and we'll rename that to by day, and again that's going to require an integer of day. Save that. To create that, we can just copy the get events that we've got and add in the by day, and the interface tells us that requires an int called day, and instead of watch conference events we're going to watch conference events by day, and that's going to need the day sent into it. Okay, so that's the database and our repository sorted. So now the big one, we come to our home screen and we have a cubit in here, and to be honest I don't think a cubit's going to be good enough anymore. I think we're going to need to change this to have events as well. So in order to do that we're going to change this cubit to a block. So I'm going to rename it first of all from homepage cubit to homepage block, even though it's still a cubit at the moment. That will just make things easier. So I'm going to hover or click on homepage cubit, hit F2 and just rename it to block. Now there's no real reason why we'd have to rename it, it's just going to be easier. You know, we won't get confused what's a block and what's a cubit. Now you can see two files have opened up at the top here. They're files that have been changed by that refactoring. So somewhere in here, homepage cubit, there we go, has been changed to homepage block. Just need to do a file, save all, and save all the files. Next, I'm going to take this homepage cubit and I'm going to F2 on that and rename that to homepage block. Again, I'm going to get a dialog box which you might not see on the video, but it comes up saying, do you want to refactor making these changes? I'm going to click on OK, and again it's going to open up and change for us the import files. So we've now got homepage block. Okay, once again, file, save all. And then finally, I'm going to rename the folder itself. And I'm going to change that to a block as well. And that doesn't refactor, unfortunately. But luckily, all the pages that have it in are open. So I just need to rename that to block there. Save and close that. And again, here. Block, save and close that, and that takes care of the renaming. Okay, so to actually turn it into a block we need to have events as well. So I'm going to create a new file which we're going to call homepage event.dart, and this is going to be part of the home page block.dart file. For that to be a part of it on the home page block, we need to say that it has a part which is the home page event.dart. Okay, so that sets up the part file. We then need to create our abstract event. This is the event, the class, the abstract class, which everything is going to be based off. So we'll create an abstract class, homepage event, and it's going to extend equatable. Okay, I'm going to set it up as a const homepage event, and we're going to override the props, except we haven't got any to override, so it's just empty like that. Okay, Saving that, we can now come to our homepage block, get rid of that stray dart HTML that's come in. And now, instead of extending a cubit, it's going to extend the block. And that requires the state and the event. So homepage event. Fantastic. So that's our block almost set up. We now just need to replicate this loading event that we've got going on. So let's create a couple of events. The first one is going to be load event by day, and that's going to extend our home page event. That's going to take a final integer, which is going to be the day, and we'll have a constructor for that, load events by day. And I'm not going to require the day, but I'm going to put in a default day of -1. Now the reason I'm going to use -1 is because we can use that later on as an understanding that a day, the events are being loaded and we haven't selected a day yet. That's the idea. We'll see how that goes in a minute. Okay. The next event we're going to need is one that we haven't used yet, but that's when the events are changed. So I'm going to put that in, called events changed. That also extends our homepage event. And we're going to have here a final list of conf events, which we'll call events. We're also going to have the integer of the day, so what day has been selected. And then we will have a const events changed, and it's going to require both the list of events and the day. All right, now both of these being equatable, we need to override the properties. So let's override day in this one, and in this one we're going to override both events and day, like so. Okay, come back to our block. So now this load events needs to change. So I'm just going to rename it. I'm going to put an X there and get rid of that from our constructor. Instead, because this is a block, we now need to be looking for our events. So on load events by day, we're going to call the method load events like that. Control dot on it and generate that. And I'm just going to take it from the bottom and move it up here just so we can see what we're doing. So when we call this event, then what we're going to do is exactly what we're doing here for now. We're going to take this code and we're going to paste it in here like that. Now the problem is, if we do that, we're going to get an error message because we can't emit within a listener. So what we have to do here instead is add a new event. And the event that we're going to add is the events changed event. And for now, I'm just going to select day 0. Okay, so day -1 is going to equal when the app first starts. Day 0 is going to equal when nothing has been clicked on or when a day hasn't been chosen, and you'll see how that works in a moment. Okay, so we need to handle that event. One event's changed. We're going to call events changed. Let's make sure we get the right bracket in. Create the method for that. And again, I'm just going to move that up. So when this event is called, what we're going to do is emit the same thing that we did before, except the events are now stored within the event itself. So within the event changed, we're storing the list of events and the day. So we can add from the event, changed event, we can get the list of events. And now we also want to be able to store the day. We'll do that in a minute. So let's just go over that once more. When we call load events by day, we load the events, which is this. The subscription then watches for changes from our database. And when it gets the change from the database, it's going to add a new event. This is a block event, passing that list of events to the block event. When the block event is called, we're going to call the events changed method, and that itself is going to emit the state with the events. So now, to get this working, because we've got rid of the load events within our constructor, what we need to do is come back to our homepage.dart, and where we load the block, we're going to add an event immediately, which is load event by day. And because this is the initial, we're going to set the day to -1. And that'll save that as a constant there. So when the block is first loaded, the day is going to be set to -1. Okay, now at this stage, everything should be back to how it was. And I've just realized we can get rid of that floating action button there. That's no longer needed. Okay, so let's save everything, make sure it's all saved, and restart the app, because we've done a lot of changes to the block. And with a bit of luck, it all still works. Excellent. But of course, nothing's happened yet. So let's move on to make something happen. So let's come to our home page. And in here we have a date row. So really it's in the date row we want to be, where we have these date boxes. Well, now we want to be a bit smarter, because we don't want to hard set which one's active, and we don't want to be writing the code 4 or 5 times here. So what we're going to do instead is just put a couple of returns and then comment out that part for a moment. What we're going to do is we're going to create a list of the dates. So that's 8, 9, 10 and 11. Put some spaces in there just so it shouts less at us. Okay. Then we can map that list and return something for each one. So what we're going to return for each one is the date box, and the text is going to be, in this case, E, because E is the day. Okay, that creates an iterable, and we can convert that back to a list like so. Now it's complaining here that E is an integer and the date box requires a string. Well, it does at the moment, but I'm going to change that. So I'm going to come down to the date box and I'm going to change the string to an int, and I'm going to rename it today. It's still going to be required, and where it's used within it, the text box, we're going to call toString there to convert the integer to a string. With that done, we can just change text here to day, and that should work. So if I save that, we should see the app reload and nothing will be selected. Okay, let's hit refresh. Okay, so there we are. We've got our boxes and none of them are currently active. Well, we need to know which one's active, and to do that we're going to need to know what state the state is. So to get the state, we need to get the block builder. So I'm going to wrap the row with a block builder, and of course this is going to be the home page block, and that's going to require the block Flutter import and also our homepage block import. Then within our builder, I'm going to say if state is homepage loaded, then we're going to display the row. Else, if the homepage isn't loaded, we're just going to return a sized box, i.e. nothing. We need a return in there. Okay, so let's come back now to the homepage state. So where homepage is loaded, we have our list of events, but I'm now going to also need to know what day it is. So let's add that in. Required this day, and add that to the props. That's going to break our homepage block because somewhere in here it's going to require the day. Yep. So omit the homepage loaded, where the day is equal the event day. We're already doing that. So we can save that and hard restart that. Now coming back to the date row, we can say within the date box here that it is going to be active if the state day is equal to E. So if the active state day is 8 and E is 8, then we should get a highlight. Now nothing's going to happen yet because the state day isn't active. We need to do that. So let's make these buttons clickable so we can start changing the date. So we have an aspect ratio and a child of a container. Let's wrap this container with a gesture detector. And here we're going to have an on tap event, like so. Too many brackets. And in here we're going to say context read. Read what? Well, it's our home page block. And we're going to add an event. And the event is going to be load events by day. And the day is going to be the day that has been sent in. So this day, which is why it needs to be an integer now, so we can pass that integer to load events by day. Okay, so let's come back now to our block and look at our load events by day, which is our load events here. So instead of day here being 0, which I just put in as a holder, that's now going to come from our event. I'm going to do it slightly differently and you'll see why. I'm going to take a final integer. I'm going to say int day equals the event day. Okay, and here I'm going to pass the day instead of 0. So with that saved, we can now change our event. So initially, when we first load the app, so let's do a restart there. The day is -1, so that doesn't match any of those. And now when we click on them, it changes. But the actual event agenda isn't changing. So how do we get that to change? Well, what we do is we say here what we want to happen. So I'm going to say if day equals 0, then we're going to set up the subscription to listen to all the events. Else, and then I'm just going to copy this subscription, and instead of get events, we're going to do get events by day and pass in the day. So if the day equals 0, we're going to listen to all the events and get all the events. Otherwise, we're going to get events by day, and that should just return the events for that day. Now we do have one problem here, is we're not dealing with -1. So just for now, just for a second, I'm going to say if day equals -1, then day equals 0. Okay, we'll do something a bit more interesting there in a minute. So let's save, refresh, come back to our app, and now click on 8, and we get our one item that has got the 8th as its event date. 9, 10, and 11 has nothing under it yet. So that is working. Okay. But what I want to be able to do as well is get back to all the events. And I want to do that if I click on highlighted. So 8 is currently highlighted. If I click on that again, I want it to reset to all the dates. How do I do that? Well, that's straightforward really. If we come back to our date row, when we click on the block, we're adding the day here. And what we can say is, I'll just put this on another line so you can see this. Instead of just loading events by day, we can say if this event is currently active, then set the day to 0. Otherwise, set the day to whatever the day is. So with a save of that, now if I click on 8, it should unhighlight because it's now set the day to 0, and we get all our events back. 9, 8, 9, 9 again, they all come back. Awesome. So what about this? Why have I done this -1 part at the beginning? Well, what I actually want to happen is if it's during the event, when you start the app, instead of having nothing selected, I would like it to automatically select the correct day. And so we can do that by saying if date is -1, then let's do something. What do we want to happen? Well, first of all, we need to get the current date time. Final now, equals date time now. Okay, so that gives us the current time and date of the app. And we know that this event is happening on the 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th of March 2023. Well, I'm not worried about the year, but I am worried about the month and the date. So I'm going to say if now month equals 3 and now day is greater than and equal to 8 and now day is less than or equal to 11, then I want the day to equal now day, else day equals 0. Okay, So if the current time and date, if the current month is 3 and the current day of the month is between 8 and 11 inclusive, then the day is now overridden by event day, else day equals 0, so nothing's selected. But if a user does set a day, so if the user clicks on 8, at this point day will equal 8, so day does not equal -1, so it'll ignore all that and come down to this part here. Okay, how can we test that? Well, simplest way of doing it without having to change the time and date is just to hard code the date. So just for testing, I'm going to say final now equals date time dot UTC. That takes a year, so 2023, a month 3, and a day 10. It also takes hours, minutes and seconds and all the rest, but we're not worried about that. So let's save that and look at our app when we refresh it. And as soon as the app starts, the 10th is selected. Perfect. What happens if we change this to 8 and save? We have to restart the app here because the block, this only happens when the block is created. Excellent. And what happens if we're in a totally different month altogether, in a different year? If we save and refresh that, then what happens is nothing selected. So that is purely for testing. I'm going to comment that out and put the real one in, but I'll leave that in comments for now so you can test that. And that's it. We have finally got our date bar working, showing the agenda for the selected date. Folks, if you've enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It does help me out. And we'll see you next time. Until then, take care for now. Bye.